3.
Hi. We're live. We are Lipstick and Logic +1 today.
+1, our little helper.
Little nugget. Hey, nugget. Jessica, it's actually her birthday weekend, so she's out celebrating, and we just want to give a birthday shout out. Tomorrow's her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Miss you. We love you.
Happy birthday.
Okay. Right, let's go ahead and get started. And sorry about the snafus that we had earlier, but if you're with us, thanks for joining. Today we wanted to bring up the topic of failing forward. So failure is absolutely a part of life, but it's something with a negative connotation, unfortunately, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we think about failure and we're always told, oh, you need to be perfect. I think even the system that we have in education is focused on kind of perfection and doing as well as you can, right?
Yeah, like failing a class is just no bueno all around.
Exactly. Maybe class is a bad example, but I mean, I actually think it's a good example because that's kind of your first view at why you need to be successful. Like you need to do well in school so that you can have a great job so that you can do well in life. And that's kind of the trajectory that most of us have from childhood on what it means to be successful and not failing. But recently there's just been kind of like a push in a movement to reevaluate the concept of what it means to fail, because failure does not mean that you have to be completely defeated. In fact, you can't grow unless you fail, right?
True.
So Will Smith, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, to a certain extent, I agree.
To a certain extent, elaborate on that.
I mean, have you met anybody that has never failed? And well, I don't know, like even Beyonce failed. But that was like in her early parts of her career. But I know some people have talked about folks, and I guess they only see the success in their life and they think that they're only successful. But people don't talk about their failures enough. So maybe that's why I'm like, that's partly true. Because there's some people who are really successful and they don't talk about their failures.
Right.
But yeah, continue with what your first point was, because I liked where it was going.
Well, my first point was I was actually listening to Will Smith talk about this concept. And again, there's a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. So everybody should go ahead and check that out to completely understand this concept. But Will Smith was saying was even when you get working out, you push yourself till you can't push yourself anymore. Once you get to that point where you can't push yourself anymore, that's failure. But we don't look at it as I'm failing because I can only bench 150 pounds, but I can't get to 160. It's like, I grew from 140 to 150, and I'm going to work my way until I can make it to 160.
Mm-hmm. So then, like, is failure inevitable then? Like, or is it that there's only success when you're moving forward? Do you know what I'm saying? Both?
Well, I don't want to say that there's only success when you're moving forward. I will definitely say that failure is inevitable.
Mm-hmm. What's your like most memorable failure?
My most memorable failure? Why'd you put me on the spot?
You guys can tell us too in the comment section below. Like, what's your most memorable failure, and then how did you overcome that and come through it? Like, that's something that's really, we don't share that enough. We don't talk about it on Facebook stories. Even in this society, we look on Instagram and we only see like the perfect portions of people's lives, or you don't even see how many pictures it takes to like post that one good picture.
30 sometimes.
30? Is that the average?
Like, ooh, the angle's doing, yeah. But that's a good point. Even with your profile picture, how many failures did it take you to get that right profile picture? Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with someone earlier today about how with social media, we get so used to seeing the most perfect part of people's lives, right? To the point where we kind of use that as a gauge for our own lives. And if we're not at this point, then we're not doing well enough. And it can like lead you down this horrible spiral of depression and just lack of self-worth. And for everyone watching, again, feel free to post how you feel about this in the comments and what your biggest failure was. Mm-hmm. My biggest failure that I can think of, I think most things that I go back to are technically like academic. Mm-hmm. So academically, I have my project management professional certification, my PMP. It took me a long time to really just buckle down and study, because when you take those practice tests, and let me speak from my experience and the experience of a lot of people I know, so I don't want to put this on everybody, but how many people do I know that have passed the first practice test that they took? I personally don't know anybody, mm-hmm. Right? So you take that test and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. And that's when you kind of have to get to the point where you either make a decision on, I'm going to buckle down, I'm going to study, and I'm going to do what I need to do to continue improving. Or you say, you know what, it's not worth it. I don't want to do this anymore. And you let it go.
One thing I know about you is how you kind of pursue failure, if that makes sense. Like you pursue whatever you have to do, you kind of face it head on. I'm the type of person, I'm afraid of failure. I don't like not being good at something. I don't like criticism, none of that. So with that awful fear of failure, I wind up procrastinating on doing anything sometimes. Only when like push comes to shove or the heat is really on my neck, I'll actually start doing stuff. And for me, failure is not an option at that point. And I feel like even if I did fail at that junction, it would be really serious, because I've waited till the last minute. And if I fail, I'm going to look really dumb. So I'm not saying that I haven't failed before, but for me, I go all the way around what I have to do because I'm avoiding failure. And there's so many things I think I could do, or that I could have done had I not been procrastinating and avoiding the fear of failure. And what was it? There's this YouTube channel I watch called The Try Guys. They have this book called The Fear of Effing Up. I'm censoring the F word, but so it's really about just going out there and doing something that you don't think you would normally succeed at. And you have to be bad at it, just as you're saying with the practice test. Like, you're going to fail the first one. It's just inevitable. You're not going to be the smartest person in the world. No one's Einstein. No one is Einstein. So I don't know. I think for me with failure, I am a little bit afraid of it. I'm very much afraid of it. But I think if I wasn't so afraid of failing, it's not actually a bad thing. I could be a lot more successful. I could be a lot more successful, or even just at least put my foot out there to see what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I could even hone in on my gift.
Okay. So what's been your biggest failure?
My biggest failure? I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think about academics. I remember I made like a C or something like that in a class before. For me, I think failure winds up tying itself closely to like relationships for me. I'm very deliberate. I try to be, which even could be something silly, but I try to be really intentional about the relationships that I enter. So whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship, I've had some of those that failed. And even through that, with the failure of those relationships, I think I've grown very significantly from those. And so now that I look at it, and sometimes, as a young woman, and women want to get married and they want to have the, fairy tale marriage, essentially. They want to have fairy tale wedding, fairy tale marriage, all that stuff, and lifelong partner. I think when we have failed relationships tied to our past, it's something that we kind of look at as like, oh, that's not good. It's kind of bad. But you learn a lot about yourself through those experiences. Not to say you should be like frivolous with your relationships. You learn a lot about yourself through those experiences. And you even kind of, from one really significant failed relationship, I feel like it really put the fire under my feet to make sure that I didn't, succeed or rely on people to succeed, or rely on that relationship to succeed. And I think it really helped me grow tremendously.
I mean, that's a good point, because pushing through failure, I think it's impossible to push. Well, push through failure and not grow
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. Like once you come on the other side, you level up, and that's it. That's how it is forever.
Do you know people that like give up after they fail?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody.
I'm on the spot, but think about it. Think about failing a class, which in that moment feels like the worst thing. There are people that drop out of school because they need like 2 classes before they finish, but it's just too hard. And it does feel very difficult in that moment. But at the end of the day, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to actually finish. I'm realizing as I talk that I need more of like personal fun in my life, because everything I do goes back to like an academic example or a professional example. Maybe that's my challenge, in my personal life or something.
Oh, that's really a good point. I like that. We'll talk offline some more.
You do something?
Yeah, we could. I mean, I remember for me, I think relationships are not, I don't mind failing at those as much. And I know some people who really don't mind failing at them. So, the people that are serial daters and they're always out with somebody on a date or something like that. And by serial dater, I mean like serious relationship. But for me, like an academic pursuit or what's the other word? I can't think of it right now. Employment pursuits. That's right. Those sort of things. I was afraid of failing. Like I went through graduate school and I was afraid of failing my prospectus. Then I was afraid of failing my my qualifying exam. Then I was afraid of failing my dissertation defense. I was afraid of even failing the writing portion for my dissertation. And those are things that I think I could have graduated a lot sooner had I not been afraid of failing at that. But nobody writes a dissertation, nobody does a presentation and does excellent the first time. It doesn't happen. But for me, I think I was so afraid, and I think it might even be tied to like imposter syndrome or something like that. I was so afraid of people thinking I wasn't smart, or so afraid it wasn't perfect, or so afraid that people were going to be like, you shouldn't be here, actually. I wouldn't do anything. So, but that's something even then I wound up growing through, because of course, I submitted a draft and it wasn't good. So you go back to the drawing board and you fix whatever the issues are, and it's fine the next time around. It's just really not that bad. So failure is not something we should fear. I know for me, it's something I'm gonna have to like. I want to be like you, so I can kind of just go forward into. You're like, girl, it's a lot. No, but just kind of like face it head on, because even then, you're doing the practice test. I'm just not that kind of person that will take a practice test and then see what I need to do next.
But you know what, though? I feel like this is my aha moment in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
As you're talking about this, failing professionally, failing academically makes sense to me. And it makes sense because I can line up exactly what I need. Okay, I got a bad review at work. I need to do X, Y, Z to improve my performance. I did well on this test. These are the areas I need to focus on, right? Life doesn't have a rule book like that. Like,
not at all.
In my mind, there's no logic to life. So when I fail, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So why not just play it safe so I don't have to experience that? I'm not saying that's the right thing. I actually think that's a horrible thing to do. But I think that's kind of how I live my life for the most part.
I mean, I think what's funny, and this is something it's kind of like abstract. I feel like oftentimes with our own, looking at it personally, we're not able to focus on ourselves because we're always looking out at what needs to be done over here. I need to go get groceries. I have to do this for work. I have to put gas in my car. I need to get my clothes together. We're never actually thinking about and being mindful about what makes us happy from the inside out and what brings us joy and what our relationships, what they should do to serve us and how we serve our relationships. So I think with dating or something like that, or even looking at things personally, if you don't fail, or if you do fail at those sort of things, you learn a little bit more about, this makes me feel uncomfortable. This makes me feel anxious. I feel shameful, and you kind of get to the root of that. And then you really are able to own what it is that makes you you. So even failure on a personal perspective, even though there's no rule book, you are the rule book. Like, you know that something doesn't feel right within you when you fail at it. And then you can kind of just dig deep and get through it and get through the mud.
Therapy session with Dr. Hunt. Thank you.
No, that's something that's really wild. Like, I know there was something I'd seen a little bit off topic, but you kind of like teach people how to love you. There's a rule book for you. You teach others how to treat you. Right. And if you don't establish that, they're just going to treat you however they're going to treat you. And I know that's something that doesn't come, it's not as easily intuitive for a younger person, because they're kind of just out in the world figuring out, where they stand and who they are. But as you become older, it's a lot easier for you to kind of communicate that with others. So that's why I think relationships and failing at those two is really, that is your rule book. You are your rule book, to answer your question.
Okay. So I'm gonna take that into like my week and see. I don't want to see how I can fail, but what I can do personally to be willing to fail at something.
Girl. Me too, though. I feel like I'm kind of getting through that now, because I remember after I had my son, I was, even that whole situation, like trying to get my dissertation completed. I was like, I don't know if this looks good, but I'm gonna submit it and see what happens. And it got accepted like that. And then I went and did the presentation. Done. Had a baby. Done. So it's kind of just like, okay, I do get scared. I get really scared when I have to do stuff, even when I was applying for jobs. But now I'm at work and it'll be like, okay, we're going to put you on this new project. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I start typing something and putting it together. Like, I don't know if this is good. And what I like about my workplace too is it's a really like wonderful environment where if something's not that good, you can get positive criticism or constructive criticism from your colleagues.
Open to that. We have to be open to that.
Always.
And not offended.
Yeah, that's something that's been like a huge thing for me, because I know growing up, I did not like criticism. I don't like people telling me.
I mean, honestly, when someone is giving you constructive criticism, it's honestly them saying, you failed at this. However, the constructive part comes in when it says, you failed at this, but this is what you need to do to improve, or you need to consider this for steps to improvement. So again, just going back to that failure word and being comfortable with the fact that failing is a part of life, and it's also like critical to growth.
I think, and I guess it goes even back to that social media thing where we don't see other people failing and we don't talk about our failures. You look at your coworker, your friends, family, and you don't necessarily hear, even with marriages, you don't hear about the failed communication they had for them to get to the point that they are. And that's something I feel like I always get frustrated. Like, why don't we talk about this stuff more?
It's so funny, because I literally had this conversation with a group of people a few hours ago, and it feels like you were in that conversation, even though you know nothing about it. So it's a need that we're seeing, that we need to kind of be more vulnerable and open to discussing our failures.
I really wish we would do that. I feel like it would make the journey a lot more comfortable, because you're like, this isn't new. I'm not the first person to fail at this. I'm not, there's an up from here, like failing forward. And that's why it's also good to have a mentor, but it's not always easily accessible to people to have someone that they can kind of turn to in their professional life, even in their marriage. You need a marriage mentor, training, exercising, therapy, all that stuff. But failure is something inevitable. What were you saying?
I did want to make one point, because as people of color, like when you think of failing from a business perspective, I'm going to start this business and use the startup money I have. Keep it pushing, right? However, when you come from a community that's marginalized, you don't have the same kind of resources that allow you to pick up failure.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you do to address that so you have the opportunity to fail?
That's a good question.
I've been thinking about that for like hours.
I mean, I feel like in that instance, failure is inevitable, but it's about being comfortable in it. You know what I'm saying? And I think for those sort of instances, probably the drive for success is more powerful than the fear of failure, or even just the sorrow of failure. Like, you know, let's say you're at the bottom of a pit, right? You're gonna climb up the pit, and if you fall, it doesn't matter. I'm trying to get out this pit. Like, in those instances, and that's something you can really learn about too, because I think oftentimes people have this false sense of security in where they are, and they're afraid that if they fail, that security is going to disappear. And it might, but it doesn't matter, because it's the whole thing about going forward is you're going to be better having tried than not having tried at all. Like, it's bound to happen. What are you doing?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and challenge all of our viewers that now and later to something that you can fail forward with this week. Let us know what you're challenging yourself to. Let us know if you're open to sharing that you failed at and you've grown. That's failing now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You want to talk about your lipstick, Isha?
Yeah, I'm wearing truffle matchstick on the outer as my lip liner, and then I'm wearing Freckle Fiesta as my color. I love it.
Pretty.
That's you.
I'm also wearing Fenty. I'm wearing Flamingo Acid. It's one of my favorites. I hate the color pink with a fashion. Like, it's the worst color that exists, in my opinion. Just so feminine and frilly, I guess. And I'm a feminine person, but I just don't like pink. But after that rant, I love this pink. And I love how these are shaped, because it makes it kind of easy to line your lips with it.
I try to keep the shape intact when I do my lips.
Yeah, it's such a vivid color, and I love it.
It's so pretty.
Thanks.
Say bye-bye. Our special guest is here still.
Bye, Nugget. We'll see you guys.
Yeah, join us next week for our next topic. Keep a lookout on our page, our Instagram, Facebook, and our Twitter.
And YouTube.
And YouTube. And we'll see you guys next week.
Your option. Bye, guys.
Bye.